Okay, so I think we can go ahead and get started. Thank you all for joining us tonight. My name is Anna Ozier-Bloomer, and I'm the Executive Director of Career Services at OTIS College of Art and Design. Welcome to the first ever Creative Career Conversations, a SoCal panel series jointly hosted by California Institute of the Arts, OTIS College of Art and Design, Art Center College of Art and Design, Laguna College of Art and Design, and Loyola Marymount University, or LMU. I hope you were able to join the first panel of the day, Navigating Work and Life Abroad, hosted by Laguna College of Art and Design. It was fantastic. Please join us after this panel is over for our last program of this evening, Pathways to Teaching and Creative Careers in Education, which will be hosted by CalArts. It begins at 6:30 p.m. Pacific time, and April Castro is going to pop the link in the chat for you all in case you were not able to register. So this event is Maintaining Arts Connection During COVID. I'm truly honored to moderate a discussion on such an important topic with these incredible panelists. Thank you to our esteemed panelists, to my colleagues at our partner schools for collaborating on this event, and to April Castro, our Career Services, Employer Relations, and Internship Specialist for her support on this event. April is going to be monitoring our chat and Q&A. I'll be posting helpful links to you all in the chat as our discussion unfolds. So just a couple of housekeeping notes. We'll have audience Q&A. You can use the Q&A function to submit your question, and we'll go through those after our panelists have had their discussion. Feel free to submit your questions during the conversation or during the Q&A time at the end. If you need closed captioning, you can just turn this on at the bottom of your Zoom window with the button that says CC. Before we start, I want to acknowledge that the lands on which we live and work in the present day United States, as well as many other places, belong to Native peoples who possess sacred connections to it and have stewarded the land sustainably for thousands of years before the arrival of white settlers. I acknowledge the long history and effects of settler colonialism that resulted in genocide, forced removal, and relocation, fractured connections to sacred homelands, as well as lost histories, relations, languages, ways of life, and other personal and cultural attributes. I'm currently standing on the land of the Kickapoo tribe, now land known as Oak Park, Illinois. And the land on which OTIS College stands is that of the Chumash, the Tongva, and the Kizh tribes. If you're not sure on whose land you live, I invite you to visit native-land.ca to learn. It's a really great website. I can map that for you. So recently, my colleague April and I were talking, and she reminded me, we're in the middle of a pandemic. Somehow in the moment, I had forgotten how dramatically this fact affects every single step we take throughout our days. While we can't forget what we're all experiencing right now, it's easy to lose sight of how broadly this has permeated our lives. I want to take a moment to acknowledge all the lives lost during this difficult time, whether to COVID or otherwise, and all the folks out there who are suffering and struggling. My hope with tonight's panel is that it'll be a chance for us to come together and offer ways we can support each other, because the only path forward is together. So first, I'm going to introduce our esteemed panelists by reading their bios and showing you some images of their work and the work of their organizations. Benz Amataya was born in Bangkok, Thailand. She's a painter, meditation teacher, and community builder currently based in Chicago. She received a master's degree in integrated communications from the Medill School of Journalism at Northwestern and certification in expressive art facilitation from the Open Studio Project in 2015. She's received mindfulness trainings from Magnolia Grove Monastery in the lineage of Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh in 2020, and she's currently studying with her parents, who are both certified meditation teachers in the Theravada lineage of Thailand. Benz is founder of the Dear Artist Project, a platform with a mission to create more dialogue around mental health in the art community and provide mental health resources and support for artists. The Dear Artist Project facilitates an online artist residency called Dear Artists with Anxiety. It curates mental health focused art exhibitions and offers online classes throughout the year to help artists become mentally healthy and holistically well. You can learn more at dearartistproject.com and on Instagram at dearartist. And next, April Freely is a writer and poet and the executive director of the Fire Island Artist Residency. Now in its 10th year, the Fire Island Artist Residency was the first program in the US dedicated to emerging LGBTQ+ visual artists. The program provides lived workspace to artists and poets in the Cherry Grove community on Fire Island off the coast of Long Island, New York, a place steeped in LGBTQ history to create, commune, and contribute to the location's rich artistic history. Prilly has worked in arts administration and education for over 12 years. She holds a Bachelor of Arts from Brown University, an MFA in nonfiction from the University of Iowa, and an MFA in poetry from New York University. She's received fellowships and awards from Queer Art Mentorship, Cave Canem, the Ohio Arts Council, Vermont Studio Center, the Tulsa Arts Fellowship, and the Fine Arts Work Center in Provincetown. She currently lives in Brooklyn, New York, and more information can be found at fireislandartistresidency.org. Next, oops, excuse me. There we go. Polly Irungu is a multimedia journalist, digital editor, and self-taught photographer. She's the founder of Black Women Photographers, a global community and online database of Black women and non-binary photographers. She's also a digital content editor at WNYC New York Public Radio, where she's responsible for managing social media and pitching new stories and features for WNYC and PRX's show, The Takeaway. As a photographer, Irungu's work has been published widely, including BBC News, Refinery 29, NPR, The Washington Post, BuzzFeed, CNN, HuffPost, OK Africa, just to name a few. She's spoken about Black women photographers, about building community, about media diversity, African media, and more on NBC News, We Are Black Journos, Twitter Media, the 2020 Palm Springs Photo Festival, The Guardian Nigeria, and the National Association of Black Journalists, again, just to name a few. Born in Nairobi, Kenya, she holds a degree in journalism from the University of Oregon and has lived around the world, from Nairobi to Kansas, to Oregon, to Arkansas, and ultimately now to Brooklyn, New York. And more information is at blackwomenphotographers.com. And last but not least, Alex Pike is an artist living and working in Los Angeles. His modular paper-based wall installations explore perception, interdependence, and improvisation within structure while engaging with the complexities of social dynamics. He's exhibited in the US and internationally with notable solo projects at Praxis New York, Art on Paper 2016, and Gallery Joe. His work has been featured in group exhibitions at Brave and Lee Projects, Leslie Heller Workspace, both in New York City, and Monopractice, among others. Pike is founder and director of Tiger Strikes Asteroid, which is a nonprofit network of artist-run spaces across the country. And he serves on the advisory board at Trestle Gallery, where he formerly worked as gallery director. He was the curator of Satellite Art Show in Miami from 2015 to 2018. And more work can be found at tigerstrikesasteroid.com and alexpike.com. So please join me in welcoming our panelists. This is where normally we would be clapping if we were all together. So we can all do a clap from home. So thank you all so much for being here. I know how difficult just showing up for something like this is. So it really means a lot to me and to all of our students and alumni. So to get us started, the first question I'll pose to all of you is, how has your work as arts organizers had to pivot over the last year and a few months now, and adjusted to meet artist needs in COVID, speaking specifically about the projects or organizations that you run. And you can take this opportunity to also talk more broadly about the mission of your organization or project. And anyone who wants to dive in should go for it.
I'll start because I think I was crazy enough to launch, a global community in midst of in a global pandemic. Mine really just started with the COVID-19 Relief Fund. I launched it June 19th. My goal was to raise $7,000 because I was going to kick off a community in the database on July 7th on my birthday. Fortunately, I was able to raise twice that. We raised over $14,000 to help photographers here in the States, but internationally, specifically Black women and non-binary photographers who needed that urgent relief. And since then, I think, with that said, I think everything I've done has just been shaped by the pandemic. So I've only been able to do like one New York City meetup, and that was socially distant, but everything else has been virtual. So I've been doing different series of conversations and partnerships with different brands. For example, currently having an ongoing series with Adobe Lightroom, where it's just in conversation with these Black creatives, and then just also hosting conversations virtually just under the Black Women Photographers name. Like 2 weeks ago, we held a conversation that was open to the community, our allies, with Pete Souza. who was, the former chief White House official photographer for Barack Obama presidency and also Reagan presidency. And so, everything I've done has been revolving around the pandemic. It's all been virtual. We do like Zoom happy hours with the community. We do everything virtual. Even now, this Friday, we have a portfolio review session with Reuters, some staff from Reuters, and that is virtual. So I think for me, fortunately, I think it's been working out okay, because again, we are everywhere. We're not just in New York. And so even if we were able to meet in person, it would be scattered. People would be missing out on these events. And so this has been able to open the doors for, more folks who are based elsewhere in the States, but also internationally, to take part in this and feel, a sense of community during this time.
That's great. Thank you so much.
We're fellow cancers. My birthday is at the end of June. Being a network of artist-run exhibition spaces, the pandemic obviously basically canceled our entire year of programming. We had planned a series of exhibitions exploring artist-run spaces all across the country. We were able to have a few of those at the beginning of the year, but those are all permanently on hold. And since we are paying rent on 4 different spaces with not much rent relief, unfortunately, we decided to turn around and use those empty spaces as artist residencies. So some were short-term, some were a little bit longer term, but we gave our space over to artists that just, either needed the space or just wanted like a little bit of mental space for themselves to make work. And we also sort of launched this sort of online printable exhibition series called TSA PDF, where the idea was that you could just download a PDF and print out the exhibition yourself and hang it however you wanted. And we got, that was a fun way to sort of reach people that didn't live in the cities where we have spaces. And we got to see a lot of install shots from all across the world, which is cool. With that being said, I think that the real thing that affected us as an organization, we're all volunteer run. So most of our artists, most of the members are artists and their teachers and their parents. And so they obviously were dealing with the shift to remote teaching. Personally, I'm dealing with the shift to having online school only for my oldest daughter. So we really just tried to like slow down, and be like, we don't need to do that much. And I mean, for me personally, this year has been one of a lot of like reflection and like figuring out how much I have been tethering my self-worth to how much I produce and how that is related to internalized capitalism. So I think for us, like going forward, we're going to try to do a little bit less and try to do what we do with a little bit more intention, and especially in regards to who we are giving space to and why, and going forward with that with a lot more purpose and intentionality, which I think we were lacking in before.
That's really interesting. I think that's the opposite of what a lot of folks are experiencing, than doing less with more intention. A lot of industries and a lot of folks are being pushed to do more and more and more, I think on even shorter notice. So just interesting to hear how differently, kind of organizations are letting their projects play out and are making those changes.
Like to share as well, because I'd like to piggyback on that, because I feel like I'm in the same boat with Dear Artists, that obviously the pandemic has affected us in a big way, because I had a grand plan of getting artists together for a small retreat. And just to share, I started Dear Artists project just as a passion project, because I wanted to develop some nurturing connections with women artists. And it was just going to be me and a few local women getting together to talk about something that is not art, artists getting together, talking about life. So it was just going to be that. And then the pandemic came, and it really affected my mental health in my personal life. And I've never experienced mental health problems before. So I'm kind of naive in this field. And growing up in Bangkok, it's not a common thing to seek help from psychiatrists or counselors. And the pandemic really made me realize that I do have mental health problems that I didn't know or was not willing to accept before. So it was like a moment of truth thing that I experienced personally, which gave me clarity that I need to bring into this project, into Dear Artist project. So in, I think, June of 2020, I decided to shift Dear Artist focus from just being a nurturing environment for women artists to be a community that focuses on artists' mental health. And it's still a developing project because I am not a certified counselor. And I make that really clear that I'm not here to console anyone. But now the aim of the project is to be a platform for artists to share more about mental health stories and talk about it and share some resources. So yeah, that's where the artist project is.
Great. And how interesting that it sounds like you and Alex had similar kind of experiences learning and, about yourself and kind of seeing yourself in the work that you do in a new way. Yeah. April Freely, yeah.
Yeah. So our sort of model is to offer time and space to artists and poets in a specific location. This is a beach town. It is, very, very sort of long and skinny. So you can look from the bay side to the ocean side if you're standing in the middle of town there. And it's a little town, Fire Island, with no hospital at all. So during the pandemic, we had to cancel the 2020 season that we had planned. But I think that one of the great things about the pandemic, as everyone has said so far, has to do with the accessibility that is opening up in terms of being able to get artists together who maybe couldn't have come to Fire Island. It's pretty sort of arduous to get there. There's only ferries that go back and forth, and there's no, you have to have your groceries shipped onto the island. It's very a lot of in-depth things go into to sort of building a space of retreat. So one thing that we were able to do is community building amongst the artists from different cohorts in the organization. So like folk who have come through the residency in 2012 now have a better connection with people who came through in 2016. And that was something that was beneficial. Also, we're working on a lot more storytelling. So things that you can access from our website, which we're working on it. It's not up yet, but we're working on it in terms of what the histories have been on Fire Island as it relates to the arts. All sorts of really great stories to tell about key players in our cultural landscape. And so to have those stories more accessible is something that we can offer. And so we're working on that. Another thing we're doing is just all the basic things that we might do, in our separate locations where we're located. So one of the initiatives in terms of our partnerships with other like-minded arts organizations was with an organization called Visual AIDS, based in New York City here, that works with artists who are dealing with HIV and AIDS as a part of our community. And what we did this year, as we do normally, is to fashion Valentine's cards for this year was for women specifically who are who are living with HIV and AIDS. So just to have a space virtually to see those Valentines that we built together, all the artists in their separate little locations, to build a sense of like that we are still here. And this isn't the first pandemic that we've dealt with, really. And so I think that it's been really great to get to know folk, even in the Zoom spaces, has been really helpful. And to have, work sessions where people will get together and work at a certain time for a little bit of, for an hour or so. So I think Zoom has been really productive. I think that the sort of, some of the gains that we have worked through the pandemic, though some things have changed. And for instance, like artists who have been a part of our residency who maybe needed like emergency funding for living or workspace sort of expenses, we were able to take the money that we were going to put into those rental properties and put it toward direct artist relief. So I think that there's been a lot of different kinds of opportunities that have opened up despite the pandemic. And that's been really exciting. I mean, I think that these are lots of great tools that we're going to definitely be using even, post-pandemic when we all are back to the normal times and we can get together again for sure.
Thanks for sharing. I'm already so even more inspired by you all than I was before, just to hear the different ways that you have pivoted and started new projects and taken advantage of opportunities out there and created new things, and done so much self-reflection. So one of the things that artists, and you all know this very well, think is true is that you can just be an artist, and that if you have to have a job or you do something else, then you're not really an artist. And I love that all of you do multiple things. Such a good example for all of our students and alumni who are watching and listening right now. So could you talk about how your personal creative practices have changed over the last year, if they have?
Yeah, I can take that first as well. So by day, by day I have a full-time job. That alone is, time consuming as it is, right? But then, my background, I'm a photographer, and a writer, freelance. Like, how can I still feel like a creative, as you're saying, when I have to also manage my day-to-day work? And my work in news for that being, so it's never really off, it's never really done at the time it's supposed to be done, because you just never know what the news cycle may bring. And I don't know, for me, it's like, 2020, similar to when the panelist was saying, was a lot mentally for me. I did take time off, I couldn't bring myself to pick up my camera, when the wave of, unrest was happening, different, like the police brutality here in the States, but also internationally. And so for me, I mean, COVID aside, I think that was just what was mentally, taxing. And then you add the pandemic to it as well. So I really had to stop, and really just, I guess, deal with all the emotions I was feeling as a person. Then as a creative, I didn't have that sense of urgency to create or to document the protests. I've done it before, and then that it does take a toll on you as well. And so for me, I just had to sit through and go through those feelings and really process that. And then I want to say, like, maybe 2-3 months of that, I would say, is when I finally felt some kind of inkling to like do something creative and tap into that and who I am as a creative. And so that is when I started, laying the foundation and, of the organization I have been building, Black Women Photographers. That's, I want to say, around, May, June. That's when I really was like laying that foundation down. July is when I launched it, and then it's just been like full speed ahead. But again, it's still that balancing act of how do I, build a community? How do I, do my day-to-day work? And then how do I also pursue my own freelance work? So I don't have the perfect formula. If someone does, feel free to share it with me, because I'm still, trying to navigate all those things, and just even my personal life and all of that. So, anyone in the audience, feel free to drop a line if you have the formula for that. But hopefully I answered your question.
Yeah, let me know if someone figures out that formula too. I'd love to know. But I love that, Polly, you just gave everybody permission to not make work when you need to not make it, right? there's also this pressure, I think we feel like all the time to be producing, like Alex said, produce more. And
Yeah.
especially when there's something going on that is so important and powerful. And as a photographer, there's that's extra pull to feel like you're supposed to go document and make work
Mhm.
about that specific thing. But you have to take care of yourself, and every artist deals with these experiences very differently. So thank you for sharing that with our students.
No, thank you. And yeah, Alex, hit it on the nail when he was talking about being intentional. And for me, that's just also, I think that's a great word to have for the year. If you were trying to look for a word for the year, is to be intentional, because it's like, it's not about the quantity of what you produce. For me, at least, it's not. And for what Alex was sharing, I echo those same sentiments. It's like, I want to be able to, when I do produce something, further to do this like quality work and for it to make an impact. Whether that's twice a year, 4 times a year, it doesn't matter to me. For me, is doing it on my own terms is what I've been, better at doing, and not feeling that pressure with just whatever it may be, from social media pressure, personal pressure, all the expectations you put on yourself, family, whatever it may be. Just I block out that noise, and I'm trying to be better at that and doing it on my own terms. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about this on a previous panel, Anna, but like I think what like being a parent has kind of taught me is, especially like being in the second time around now, is the first time like I was super stressed, and I'm a stay-at-home dad, so I'm primary caregiver, uh, and I would just try to like do as much as I can in like the 15-minute naps or the 30-minute naps or whatever. And then like after a couple of years of that, like I realized that I had not been bored in my studio for like 3 years, like, and I hadn't had the time to like just like sit down and just think about the work, let my mind wander. Um, and I just like always like sort of felt that pressure that you're talking about, Polly. And um, yeah, so I mean, I guess like, so like for me, like what I kind of been trying to tell myself is that there's like, we all juggle multiple projects and jobs and roles. There's like seasons to everything, and like for example, right now it's like a season where I really have to be there for my family, just because it's like literally the worst year in like 100 years, right? And like, so like that's okay, and like the art will be there later, right? Or like on kind of a more micro scale, like we just finished up our year-end fundraiser, and like I have to like get the taxes ready for Tiger Strikes Asteroid, so like right now, like all of my free time is like finishing up that sort of stuff. So then like the art practice takes a back burner, right? But once that's done, then like it'll be a season where I have some time to work on like the my own practice, if I want to. So it's like, I don't know, I feel like I've been asked this question a lot, so I've answered it in multiple ways, but I feel like it's like there's never a balance. Like if it's like this sort of like zero-sum game, then it's like you're just gonna like um, kind of go crazy, but if it's just like, you just do the task at hand as much as you can, and then do the next thing, and then do the next thing. It's I mean, I think being an artist is the long game, right? Like we want to all be old and still making work and still like interested in making work, right? So it's like whoever gets there wins, right? It's not like whoever made like 20 more paintings or whatever wins. It's like sort of having a life.
Yeah, absolutely. And it goes in seasons. I love that. I think students need to hear that too. Any artist at any stage needs to hear that.
I've also been having a lot of really great success with attending to how I'm using my time. So talking with other artists about like, what actually happened during the hours of your day this week? Like, are you really accounting for how you're using your time? Because I think, oh, say I need to do some grant writing. If I haven't scheduled it, maybe it won't get done. Or if I'm working on a poem, maybe I'm completing many more things that I had assumed that I had completed, or even just withholding some judgment can be helpful too, right? So even if I am making things I was talking to a group of poets who everyone was saying, oh, we don't have any quarantine poems. We don't have any quarantine poems. But then, we were just sharing work and the pieces were amazing and absolutely like perfect for a perfect sort of encapsulation of this moment. But of course, as the person who's writing it, you're like, I don't know, this is nothing, right? So I think that reserving judgment and really like maybe considering taking a look at like, what is your time really looking like? And is it where your values are, is the way you're actually spending your time in real life sort of lined up with what your values are?
I love that idea of like the sort of like the refraining from judgment. I feel like that's like, and it's like also important to think about like whose voice is it that you imagine what that's doing the judging, right? It's like, I mean, it's so rare to have an all POC panel, but it's like, we all navigate the world simultaneously, like looking at ourselves like through the white lens, but then also like as ourselves, and it's this constant like navigation of that. So I don't know, that just really resonated with me when you said that. It's something I've been thinking about a lot this past year.
Yeah, I can relate to that too. And I feel like in the beginning of the pandemic, I totally felt the pressure of, you know, having this privilege to be in the studio 24 hours a day, not having to go anywhere. I felt like I needed to make more things or come up with some new initiatives and things like that. So that's the source of my mental health problem that I addressed earlier. It's one of them. So yes, the pandemic did affect my art practice in terms of increasing the pressure of me feeling like I needed to deliver more now that I don't have to physically travel anywhere else, you know. But I didn't take into account that I have two active boys who I need to educate at home and a husband to care for and a dog and everything. So anyway, it affected me mentally, but the one good thing that I got from the pandemic is that I am a person who needs to see things like to be stimulated visually. So my treat used to be, you know, just going to a bookstore or to a museum every weekend. I'm not a super outgoing person, but that used to be my treat of the week, you know. And with the pandemic, that couldn't happen. And I was like, okay, so how do I give a treat to myself? And so that opened the door for me to travel inside. It sounds kind of woo woo and weird, but I did connect with my ancestor lineage more in terms of talking with my parents. And my mom suggested that I meditate. And that was something that I grew up seeing all the time, and I rejected it because I felt like it was pushed onto me by my parents and by my school. So I always like, no, I'm not gonna do that. If I'm gonna do that, I'm gonna do it a different way. I'm not gonna do it the way my parents do it, you know. But with the pandemic, I was like, all right, I listened to my mom and I was like, all right, maybe I'll give this meditation thing a try. And so that became my weekly treat. Instead of going to museums, I went inward, and I felt like I grew a little bit more to know myself more and to connect with my parents a little bit more. And it affected the way that I paint in the studio, and it also carried on, of course, to the artist project inevitably. So yes, I mean I think that's my one silver lining. It's to learn to enjoy being inside the house and inside myself more, which I've never experienced before.
Can I ask you all a question? I'm just curious to hear what you all think, because the three of you all, I'm just curious to think hear your thoughts on sort of intention, going back to intentionality, to creating these sort of affinity spaces. Where Fire Island is focused on queer trans artists and poets. Poly organization is focused on Black women photographers, and Ben's, you're focused on artists who struggle with mental disabilities or mental issues. I'm just curious to hear your thoughts on like why you think it's important to create affinity spaces. I don't know, just any of your thoughts. I just want all of your wisdom.
I guess I'll take a slice of it. I mean, like so many reasons. I mean, for me, it goes back to my time in Oregon. So I'm from Nairobi, Kenya, grew up in Kansas. And then after my freshman year of high school, I moved to Oregon. And so that's like where it all started for me. And when I was in Oregon, I was just longing for some type of community. For those who don't know, it's a predominantly white state. So I didn't know any other Black photographers, Black women photographers. That representation is everything, and is in a sense. And for me, also with my upbringing, very traditional African upbringing, I wasn't expected to. I wasn't supposed to pursue journalism or anything art related. I'm supposed to do more traditional careers. I'm the only journalist and photographer in my family, and so for me, I also just didn't know where to turn to if I had any questions, or what a mentor would look like in these kind of spaces. And so for me, I, for so long felt that I couldn't do that. I couldn't pursue it. I mean, it wasn't until I went to the National Association of Black Journalists, NABJ for short, one of their conferences, where I really, found a home in a sense. I could see myself actually become a journalist. I could see myself as a photographer. I could see myself navigating these two industries, and find that sense of belonging, because I think everyone is trying to fit in where they get in a sense. And for me, I didn't fit in anywhere until I actually found my tribe at NEBJ. And then I also wanted to create a tribe for Black women photographers who look like me, who were experiencing the same sort of emotions. And it's no secret that the access and resources and opportunities within these fields are very limited. And that's why they still, feel are very white in that regards because of that. And so for me, it's like, okay, how can I like do my part in a sense to try and change that, and make it easier for the next person? So I say that to all say it's like, by having at least this space, I mean, the photographers, have been telling me, oh my goodness, Polly, I was dealing with imposter syndrome. I'm still dealing with it, but, this has been able to help in so many ways. Now I actually feel like I can do this. Now I actually feel like an artist. Now I actually feel like I feel a part of something that's bigger than me. And now, they're actually able to get more opportunities and more visibility, and more ways to be hired, where it wasn't necessarily the case for them. And so for me, I think that's just a part of it. But I don't know, I hope I answered part of that question, because I feel like it's just something that I think about constantly, and it's partially why fuels the work that I do, and probably fuels the work that you all do, because it's just for so long I feel like we've been shut out of our respective industries, and now we are given some kind of, I don't know, I feel like the mic has been turned on, at least this past year the mic has been turned on my end. And now that people are listening, I'm like, okay, what can I do with when I have their attention? Like, let me do all the things. And so that's just what it's been for me.
I'll try. I think that's a really good question, Alex. I think before I launched Dear Artists, I asked myself a question like, does the art community really need another community within it? Because I already see that there are a lot of good ones out there. And I kind of doubted myself, like in terms of like, why would I be doing this? So, but I think it depends on each organizer's like intention, like going back to intention, like my intention has always been to get people together, and it's just in my heart to do it. And so I did that without really knowing what shape or form it will end up. I just was like, all right, let's get together, these moms. We started off just totally different from what we are today, but I knew that something had to get started. So I did that. And because of that, I was like, okay, now I told people that I started it. I talked to Anna and a few moms at the artist retreat that, I started this community. And I'm like, there are many times that I was like, I need to just focus on my painting alone and drop this thing, because it has become like a distraction. And, what's the whole point? But then I kept it going until the pandemic hit, like I explained earlier. And I felt like it was something that needs to happen. So to answer the question, like why do we need an affinity group? I think we only need it if an organizer really feels like it it can add something valuable and different to the community, which I believe that each of us has something different. Even if it's another artist mental health group, I still believe that it will add value. So it's just a matter of knowing what our intention is as an organizer, and knowing ourselves, like, and our heart and desires of running it. Yeah. Thank you for asking.
I also think that like in the case of fire, so we have artists who are coming from all over the world. For instance, one of the artists who came ended up being someone who we helped apply for asylum, who was in danger in their country of origin, who came to Fire Island Artist Residency sort of as like a safe haven, and then people in that community helped to like get her hooked up with the right resources in New York City to be able to stay, and now she has her green card. A really wonderful artist. So I think that like sometimes it's safety reasons. Like thank goodness I could be free from. Hopefully I could be free from like basic from attacks or just basic actual safety in your life. So I think sometimes it's that. And I think that also sometimes it's, I think that for a lot of queer folk, having a connection to a lineage has been tricky sometimes, partially having to do with the sort of AIDS pandemic, AIDS epidemic, pandemic that ravaged the community in the 80s and 90s, and just not having a connection to other artists, the artists who you want to go to, many of them may have passed away. So to rebuild some of those lineages is important. And so it's been great for that kind of work. And because Fire Island has been a home for artists for so long, there's all sorts of different kinds of resources there. But also I think that like, in terms of affinity groups, like what spaces there are for, Black trans artists, for folk who, even just for, people who are presenting in ways where, if you were someone who have been, knew about arts culture in the city, and you don't need to go to this particular location to be out and free, because you can be out and free in your hometown now. But to make sure that those communities are becoming as expressive of the full range of possibility among queer folk, that's work to do too. So we're just showing up being like, this is also, you know, queer community. So I think that all of those points that everyone has mentioned, in terms of finding a home, recognizing yourself, having questions answered that you might want answered in terms of professional practice, especially for arts, you know, I feel like this is, you know, sort of a minefield that it's really about like talking to friends, getting advice, like vetting people, like all these things you have to do in art land that I don't have to do in writer land. It's just more straightforward. So I think it's so great to have.
It's great. That's amazing that FIRE was able to provide that like literal safety for that artist. That's an amazing story. It's, yeah, I mean, I think TSA is not an affinity space. You know, we are right now, we're predominantly white. That will change in the next 3 years. But you know, like I'm like involved in a lot of like sort of informal affinity groups, we'll call them. You know, it's like text chains with like my Asian buddies and stuff like that. But I think like for the purpose of this panel, it's like it's really interesting to think about like, you know, like you create this community because you feel there's a need, but then you find that that community was there the whole time, and it's because like all these histories and artists have been erased, you know, in service of like white supremacy. So it's like I don't know. It's interesting. Like it's not like if you build it, they will come. It's like if you build it, you find out that like it was there all along, and like you just weren't taught it, or you just weren't like looking for it. You know what I mean? Like I don't know.
Yeah, and there's spaces born out of necessity, right? It's, you know, Polly sees a need and takes action to address it, right? To create support for the people who are already there and doing the work and doing great work, right? This was such a great question. Alex, thank you for asking it. We only have 10 minutes left in our event, and I want to talk to you for another hour. So there are a couple of questions in the chat I want to make sure we get to. And the question that one attendee posed sort of folds into maybe we can combine this. I'd love to hear if you have any advice for students or alumni or artists who are, you know, embarking on a career or just trying to deal right now and stay connected to people and connected to opportunities. And that kind of leads into Michael's question, which is, it seems it's even more difficult now to find ways to get resources, galleries, collectives, et cetera, to view art for representation or for gallery support. Any thoughts on how to share art in terms of seeking representation, other collective groups to participate in? And secondly, how does one begin to finance a group or collective of artists? Is it all through grants? What do you find? And I'll just say, talk to your career offices, the ones who put on these events at your respective schools, because we're here to help you answer and address these questions. But please, I'd love to hear from all of you.
I can answer the financial question. I mean, not answer it, but I can speak from my experience about that question. So TSA was entirely member funded for many years. You know, so you know, like it was really as simple as finding. You know, we started with 6 artists, and we found like literally the cheapest space possible. We divided the rent up by 6, and we paid that per month. So you know, and so it was maybe like $50 a month or something per member. So you know, it adds up, but it wasn't like completely like astronomical. So that's kind of how we have operated financially for the most part until we became a nonprofit. And you know, we aren't like swimming in grants or anything. They just like help cover like the shortage in rent because we haven't like raised membership dues in 10 years. But you know, but that now we're starting to like branch out and like sort of supplement those membership dues. But like when you're just starting out, like just be like a nothing, like be like a no profit is what I call it. But you know, don't form a company, just kind of like pull your money together, and you can kind of really do anything. I mean, especially right now, it's like everybody's just stuck on their phones looking at Instagram. As long as you have like nice photos and nice images, like nobody's gonna know like, you know, how much you're paying for rent or whatever. Like you just have to make it look good.
And I think for the other part of the question, There's a community out there for everyone. Honestly, there really is. Tap into what Anna said, the resources within your respective schools and those who are around you. I think people underestimate the power of, networking across peer networking. I think is so key. You don't know who knows who. You don't know who knows about what resource that may be, good for you and where you can find your own tribe. And then if you really feel, the need, I think it was April or sorry, one of the panelists, mentioning, ask yourself, why is it that, what is that need? What, value would you bring? Ask those hard questions and then decide to start it yourself. I didn't have any funding, still don't have necessarily much funding. I did receive 2 grants the last few months, but other than that, it's just been just the power of community and just asking for help because you never know again who will rally up and support you when you need it the most. And so I've just seen like the photo community and just respective allies to come and really support this and make it what it is. And so truly, I'm sure you'll find an organization that makes sense for you by just, searching online. I'm happy to help connect you to other photo organizations that may, be a better fit for you. But yeah, I really feel like there is something for everyone and there is something missing. Go for it.
I also take advantage of someone had a question about museums and actually being an arts community and actually seeing art. If you have institutions that you loved before, but now they're closed, many of them are offering sort of like online programming. So like it might be an open studios or a panel discussion. Those things have been really helpful for me. Open studios formats that I thought like, oh, this isn't gonna work. It's not gonna be the same. It might not be the same, but it works really well. So I would just encourage you to really consider sort of how some of these platforms work as places to migrate some of the content that you would experience otherwise. Yeah.
1000%. I just actually took advantage of the Whitney Museum. They were doing a series on Black photographers, and I was like, oh my goodness, like this was so good, like things I've never would have learned in school, that's for sure, but just within the curriculum, but just learning and just taking that time to really, again, stress the importance of taking advantage while some of these opportunities are free during this time as well. So
I'll just quickly add because we have 4 minutes left, I believe. I just wanted to add that feel free to reach out to your fellow artists in a nice and friendly way because I've never done it myself, but recently I had 2 artists in a local community who reached out to me and just said, hey, would you like to get together for a virtual studio visit? And I said yes to it. And both of them brought shared with me 2 very interesting opportunities in the Midwest that I wouldn't otherwise considered that I was good enough for, So I learned from that experience that I would reach out to artists that I would like to have conversations with, and people are generally really, really nice. And so just feel free to try. And if they don't answer, that's fine. But usually I think people will try to help or support you in the best way they can.
You're good enough for all the grants, Benz. The imposter syndrome is real. Don't get caught up in it. Two very quick things. I think, yeah, I mean, artists are going to be your first line of defense because they're going to tell you whether a dealer is shady or not, like if they don't pay artists or if they're racist or whatever. So definitely you need them. And 2, like I get asked this question a lot. So think of every gallery as its own little micro community. If you are not a part of that community, there is almost no way that you will, that gallery will be interested in your work. So you have to figure out a way to be an actual part of that community. so you can't just like copy paste, you know, a bio and images to like 1,000 different galleries. You have to be a part of that community, because the galleries, they have very limited space for which to show. Unfortunately, visual arts, the means of distribution is very, very low. Like it's not like a CD or like a music or something that can just be distributed instantly. So they have like a running list of like, I don't know, like 50 artists that they'd love to work with. So like it's not that your work is bad or whatever. It has nothing to do with quantity, but it's like you have to be a part of that community first. And there's many ways to become a part of that community. I'll leave you guys to research how to do that or figure out how to do that.
And I just have to add there, the gallery representation is not necessarily all it's cracked up to be. And that often means you're still chasing the money all the time. Your dealer might not be selling work for you, which is their job to do. You might not be paid on time. You might not be paid at all. It's not as straightforward. I think often students are sold. I mean, I went to art school, sold that that's the path to success for a studio artist. And it's just, that's not the case, right? And all of you here are offering other types of projects that break out of the gallery representation model. And I think that they're all really good examples for artists to explore all these different ways they can share their work, get involved, promote their work, and share their voice and their creative vision with the world, which I think is what artists are all hoping to do. So we are at time, and I want to be respectful of our next event that's coming up. So I'm going to end it here, and I'm going to thank all of you so much. This was even more inspiring than I hoped it would be. So I'm truly grateful to all of you and your time, and I wish all of you well. Please stay well and healthy and safe. Same for all of our attendees. And April put in the chat all the links for our panelists. You can follow them. And contact them. They're happy to hear from you. And you can also click the link to the next event that's taking place in just a few minutes. So thank you all again so much.